Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&As. So I've already got my hat on, I forgot to take it off and filming these back to back. So let me get to that first question. So recently I got into Olympic lifting. I was performing my 10th set of snatches when I felt my entire right arm from shoulder to thumb go partially numb. On a scale of 1 to Lane Norton's back, how fucked am I? You're probably not as fucked as Lane Norton's back. Let's just be realistic here. And I'm not really going to go any further on that one in this Q&A. But it sounds to me like you might have pinched a nerve. What I would do when you experience any sort of numbness like that from training, particularly under a training load, while I can tell you it sounds like a pinched nerve, I could be wrong. You need to go see a medical doctor. You need to go consult a medical doctor and find out what's going on. Because the thing that you need to remember, a lot of times when it comes to training, some stuff that we do are training injuries. Other stuff that we do are signs of other medical problems going on that show up in your training. Meaning different medical conditions that you might have, whether they're anything from a pinched nerve, which could be an issue with vertebrae alignment or something. There could be something going on with your back. There could be something going on with your shoulders. It just needs some sort of rehabilitation. And it could be something as simple as an old injury you had, a muscle imbalance that's pressed against a nerve. It could be anything like that that is being exacerbated by the training and that you could go get sorted out. But you know what? Other medical conditions also show up in our training, because when we train with heavy weights and you train intensely, it puts a strain on your body. And you know what? Weaknesses will show up. You know, sometimes someone who gets dizzy every time they squat or deadlift, that's, again, perfect example of something where you might want to go see a doctor. Make sure that you don't have some sort of cardiovascular issue going on. You know, you could have another medical problem going on that you should get checked out. I mean, anything unusual from your training, whether it's getting lightheaded, dizzy with any degree of regularity, because I mean, we're all going to get lightheaded on a heavy squat or deadlift every now and then. But when it's happening all the time, that's when you go to see a medical doctor, find out what's going on. Numbness, tingling, things like that, we could say, okay, that could be a pinched nerve. Sure, go get that checked out. But you know what? It could be other things. It could be some sort of neurological problem going on. It could be something as crazy as the first signs of MS, you know, multiple sclerosis. You could have early warning signs of various medical issues show up from training. And when you see these things happen, the smartest thing you could do is to go consult a medical doctor. Consult a medical doctor. Have them check you out. Because sometimes it's better to be safe than sorry. And with a lot of these medical conditions that are out there, and I just named a couple, I mean, who knows what these things could be? I'm not a medical doctor, but I do know this. Training can bring these things out sometimes. And when you see these things and experiencing them when training, it's an early warning for a disease that you might not have otherwise known that you have. And if you can catch a disease sometimes 6 months earlier, whether it's a cardiovascular disease, multiple sclerosis, maybe a tumor pressing against a nerve somewhere, you get these things checked out. The sooner you detect any major medical problem, I don't care whether it's MS or a tumor, the sooner you get it discovered and the sooner a medical doctor can start treating it, the better your odds are of recovering from it. The better your odds are of surviving, the better your odds of getting well. So count these things as a blessing. You know, when you see these warning signs, go have a doctor check it out, see what's going on. Better safe than sorry, in my opinion. All right, next question. Could you talk about the link between red meat, cancer, and cardiovascular disease? Is there some benefit to exclude red meat from our diet? All right, guys. No, when we're talking about risk factors from various foods, we're talking about eating them in excess. We're not talking about excluding them from your diet. People need to really, really drop this stupid ass idea that because something eaten in excess can lead to problems, that means you should never eat it in your diet or that you can't eat it in moderation. And the thing you need to remember, the cancer risk with red meat are usually associated so far with processed red meats, processed, with all these extra preservatives added in. That's their concerns, with extra saturated fat that maybe have been overcooked. You know, we do know that red meats cooked to well done or crispy do have more carcinogens. And there's a difference between eating a rare steak versus a well done steak as far as those risks go, or a bunch of bacon that you've cooked till it's crispy. All right, that's where your carcinogenic risk is to some extent. Now, as far as cardiovascular disease, we're talking about eating large amounts of saturated fat. All right, fine. If you're eating a big fatty ribeye every single day, that's what we're talking about as far as concerns are. It doesn't mean eating a lean cut of steak, because there's a big difference between a really lean piece of red meat with all the fat trimmed off that you aren't overcooking, as far as burning it with a direct flame like out on the grill, or a well-done steak. There's a big difference between that and a leaner cut of meat that maybe you've stewed or cooked in a crock pot, or a really lean steak or wild game or something else, whether it's grass-fed bison or elk. All these foods have lower saturated fat contents. A lot of these foods do, and they're leaner. So there's a big difference between eating a big fatty cut of red meat as far as cardiovascular risk versus eating leaner amounts in moderation. So please understand that there is a difference there, that just because saturated fat in excess might be bad for you doesn't mean that it's necessary to avoid all saturated fat, and it doesn't mean that you're going to see a single extra day of life for completely avoiding it. It's just like we talk about fructose, right? We talk about excessive fructose intake, and the easiest way to do that is with processed sugars. So because fructose in excess is linked to health problems, does that mean you should never eat a banana? Does it mean eating a banana and an apple every day are going to kill you? Pretty unfucking likely, isn't it? So the difference, understand the difference between moderating something versus excluding it completely. It could be the same thing with saturated fat. It's fine to eat a little bit of a lean steak or lean red meat that you're not overcooking like till it's crispy or anything, or really refined ones. Eating a pound of bacon every day or an enormous really fatty ribeye every day. There's a big difference between that and having a little bit of a really lean red meat. Even eaten every day. Enormous difference in the saturated fat content, sometimes 10 times the difference for the same amount of food. So again, just remember the content of it matters too. Just because there's a source of saturated fat in red meat doesn't mean that all red meat is necessarily going to kill you. Because just like fructose, just because we know there's a lot more fructose in refined sugars doesn't mean that you should be scared of eating a banana. A little bit of common sense goes a long way with this stuff. All right, next question. How important is counting every single calorie while cutting? For example, when I eat dinner, it's mostly home-cooked meals. It would be a real hassle to ask my parents for ingredients every single time. Would a rough estimate be fine, or is it a problem? Thanks for any input, and keep up the great videos. All right, this one's going to catch a lot of flack, and people are going to be like, oh, see, this is why you're fat, Jason. And as if I'm actually fat, medically speaking. Here's the thing, guys. People who get obsessed with their calorie counting and obsessed with cutting tend to develop body image disorders, eating disorders, and they get a warped perception of reality. Warped perception of reality, such as calling people who have flat stomachs fat. They might be bodybuilder fat, but they're not unhealthy fat, and who gives a fuck about bodybuilder fat unless you're a bodybuilder? Like, why bodybuilders even go and judge other people by their standards is fucking absurd. It's as ridiculous as women who go do beauty pageants and only comparing how they look on pageant day, not when they have all their makeup off or whatever's going on the rest of the year, of comparing every other woman they meet to that. Or every other woman who actually cares about looking okay, who maybe puts on makeup, who maybe bathes every day, maybe cuts her hair. Of that sort of obsession. And you don't want to be there. It's not good for you mentally. It's not good for you socially. But as far as that goes, being obsessive over counting calories is not going to do you any favors, and it's only going to be helpful to you if you're in some sort of endeavor to where you have an absolute deadline. Tracking every calorie as meticulously as possible is only important when you have a deadline for weight loss, and that's usually going to be a competitive endeavor or a financial endeavor, meaning, okay, you've decided to do some sort of physique competition. I don't like it. But you know what? It's your choice. And if you want to compete in that, yeah, you're probably going to have to track your calories relatively close. To the exact calorie, no. You're never going to get your calories to the exact calorie, even with a digital scale. Anyone who tells you that you can is full of shit, and they don't understand nutrition if they honestly think you're going to get within 5 calories, ever. You're never going to get within 5 calories of what you're actually eating. You can get within 100. 100's reasonably easy with digital scales if you're very, very, very careful. But even then, if you pick the wrong foods, which means you're not being careful, you're still not going to get within 100 calories. So people overdo this stuff, but I would say to you, if you don't have a deadline and your goal is just general fat loss, You know what? A loose guideline is all you need. Ballpark it, eyeball it, just get an idea. And so what if you accidentally eat your maintenance one day and then you eat 300 calorie deficit the next? And so what if it alternates every other day? Are you still going to lose body fat? Meaning if 4 days out of the week you end up with a 300 calorie deficit, and I know that's really small, and you end up being around maintenance the other 3 because you eyeballed stuff, but you're still lifting weights hard and doing cardio, aren't you still going to lose body fat? Yeah. Are you going to have the perfect time frame you might want for it? No, but you're losing body fat. You're still being successful without being obsessive about it. And really, that's what's important for most people. People who are just on a fitness journey, who say, hey, okay, I want to lose some body fat, fine. Eyeball it, ballpark it. You don't have to get it perfect. As long as you're slowly losing body fat, you're still achieving your goal. It's only really that important to be meticulous about it when you have a deadline or reason to do it. But be aware that that sometimes can be accompanied with causing you other mental problems that you don't necessarily need. So you got to weigh that out for yourself. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. Hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.